Have you ever noticed how the strongest emotional pull doesn't come from someone who chases you, but from someone who simply exists? Steady, unbothered, complete. There's a strange power in not reaching out, not explaining, not proving worth. When a woman doesn't chase, something shifts inside a man. The noise fades, the ego quiets, and for the first time he's left alone with his thoughts. He wonders why her absence feels heavier than someone else's constant presence. Why her silence speaks louder than 100 messages. It's not rejection he feels, it's curiosity, respect, a subtle challenge that isn't spoken aloud. Because when attention isn't demanded, it becomes meaningful. When affection isn't pushed, it feels real. This is where attachment begins, not in pursuit, not in pressure, but in the quiet moment when a man realizes he chose to care. When attention is freely given without effort, it rarely registers as valuable, not because people are ungrateful, but because the human mind measures worth through choice. For many men, emotional value doesn't form at the moment someone shows interest, it forms at the moment they decide to invest. When a woman chases, the connection begins with certainty. She wants him, she's available, she's leaning forward. And while that can feel flattering at first, it removes the internal process where value is constructed. There is no pause, no evaluation, no inner dialogue asking, do I want this? Instead, the mind slips into passive mode, receiving rather than choosing, and what is received without deliberation is rarely protected or deeply attached to. When a woman does not chase, the dynamic subtly changes. Her attention is not guaranteed, and that uncertainty activates awareness. The man notices her presence more sharply because it isn't constant. He starts to observe her tone, her boundaries, the way she moves through her life without centering him. This isn't about manipulation or scarcity tactics, it's about autonomy. Her life does not orbit his reactions, and that independence signals that her time and emotional energy have value of their own. The man is no longer responding to pursuit, he is responding to possibility. And possibility requires a decision. Psychologically, attachment strengthens when effort is self-directed. When a man chooses to text first, to plan time, to emotionally open up, his brain links those actions to meaning. Effort creates investment, and investment breeds attachment. This is why men often feel more connected in relationships where they had to step forward rather than be pulled in. The act of choosing creates a narrative in his mind. I wanted this. I moved toward this. That narrative becomes part of his identity, and people are deeply attached to things that reflect their own agency. Chasing disrupts this process because it short-circuits choice. When a woman constantly initiates, reassures, and pursues, the man's emotional role becomes reactive instead of intentional. He may enjoy the attention, but enjoyment is not attachment. Attachment requires a sense of ownership over the decision to connect. Without that, feelings remain shallow, easily replaced, and difficult to sustain. This is why intensity from the other side doesn't translate into depth on his side. The emotional labor was done for him, not be him. There is also a respect component embedded in choice. When a woman does not chase, she communicates without words that she trusts her own worth. She's not auditioning. She's allowing interest to rise naturally. That confidence creates a subtle power shift. The man doesn't feel pressured, but he does feel evaluated, even if unconsciously. He senses that connection with her is optional, not owed, and that awareness raises the stakes. People value what they might lose more than what they are guaranteed to keep. Importantly, this dynamic is not about withholding affection or playing hard to get. Emotional authenticity still exists. Warmth is present. Interest is visible, but it is balanced. The woman responds, she engages, she connects, but she does not overextend to secure attention. That balance preserves choice on both sides. The man steps forward not to escape loneliness or obligation, but because he is drawn. His feelings grow not from being chased, but from discovering that he wants to pursue. Over time, this self-initiated pursuit deepens emotional attachment because the man associates the relationship with his own decisions, his own effort, and his own vulnerability. The connection feels earned rather than given. And what is earned carries weight. It occupies mental space. It lingers. The woman becomes meaningful not because she tried to be, but because she allowed him to arrive there himself. Scarcity changes the way the mind assigns meaning because the human brain is wired to notice what is limited more intensely than what is abundant. When something is always available, it fades into the background of awareness. It becomes part of the environment rather than an object of focus. In emotional dynamics, this principle works quietly but powerfully. When a woman is constantly present, always initiating, always accessible, Her attention becomes predictable, and predictability reduces psychological engagement. There is nothing for the mind to lean into, no gap that invites thought. But when availability is balanced, when attention is offered without being excessive, it creates contrast, and contrast sharpens perception. For many men, emotional attachment begins not with excitement, but with contemplation. Scarcity introduces pauses, and pauses give space for reflection. When a woman is not always reaching out, not always filling the silence itself becomes active. The man starts to notice absence, not as rejection, but as something distinct. He wonders what she is doing, what occupies her world, why her presence feels different from others who are constantly there. That wondering is not trivial, it is the seed of emotional investment. The mind returns to what it cannot immediately access. Scarcity also protects emotional weight. When affection, validation, or attention is given sparingly and authentically, each moment carries significance. A conversation feels intentional rather than habitual. A message feels chosen rather than automatic. This doesn't create anxiety when it comes from self-sufficiency rather than strategy. The woman is not withholding to provoke reaction. She is simply not overextending herself. That restraint signals that her emotional energy is valuable, not endless, renewable. Value in turn invites care. Emotionally, men often attach more deeply when they feel they are stepping into something meaningful, rather than being surrounded by it. When everything is immediately accessible, there is no internal movement required. Scarcity, however, asks the man to move. Mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically, he has to decide when to reach out, how to engage, what effort to offer. That movement creates involvement, and involvement strengthens emotional ties. What the mind works toward feels more real than what falls into its lap. There is also an identity component at play. When a woman's time and attention are not constantly available, they feel earned rather than assumed. The man experiences himself as someone who has been chosen, not simply accommodated. That experience reinforces emotional significance. He is not just receiving affection, he is participating in something selective. Selectivity elevates meaning. Importantly, scarcity does not mean coldness or emotional distance. It means fullness elsewhere. A woman who has a rich inner life, priorities, and boundaries naturally creates scarcity because her energy is distributed, not fixated. This natural limitation makes her presence feel grounded and intentional. The man senses that connection with her is part of a larger, stable world, not the center of it. That stability makes emotional attachment safer and more compelling. In this way, scarcity doesn't manipulate desire, it clarifies it. It strips away noise and forces attention to become deliberate. The emotional bond that forms in that space feels deeper because it was not rushed, not flooded, and not taken for granted. Emotional stability is a quality that attracts more than fleeting attention. It draws people into lasting connection because it signals safety, reliability, and self-awareness. For men, a woman who exudes calmness and steadiness creates a space where they can lower their guard without fear of chaos or unpredictable reactions. Emotional volatility, on the other hand, triggers alertness and stress. When someone is constantly reactive or demanding, it activates the fight or flight response in the brain, keeping the mind focused on managing crisis rather than experiencing intimacy. Stability, by contrast, allows the brain to relax, to process feelings clearly, and to attach without distraction. It is in this quiet consistency that men often find themselves emotionally tethered, not because they are compelled or forced, but because they feel a deep, intuitive sense of trust. Men, like everyone else, are subconsciously scanning for cues of safety in relationships. A woman who remains composed under pressure communicates competence and inner strength without words. This doesn't mean she suppresses emotion or avoids vulnerability. Rather, her emotions are regulated, intentional, and proportionate to the situation. That regulation signals to a man that she is not dependent on his constant reassurance or control for her sense of balance. He experiences a rare freedom to express himself without fear of triggering disproportionate reactions, to be authentic, and to navigate emotional depth without feeling trapped. Emotional attachment grows in spaces where vulnerability is met with steadiness, not instability. Furthermore, emotional stability provides predictability in the rhythm of interactions. Men are naturally drawn to partners whose moods and reactions are understandable and coherent because it allows the relationship to feel navigable. When a woman is erratic or excessively reactive, the relationship feels like a series of spikes and drops, requiring continuous emotional management. A steady presence, however, offers clarity. The man learns that his feelings and expressions will be met with consistency, creating trust. Trust is foundational to attachment, and stability is the environment in which trust thrives. Stability also communicates self-sufficiency. A woman who is emotionally anchored signals that her happiness and sense of worth are not contingent on his actions or approval. This is magnetic because it shifts the dynamic from one of responsibility to one of genuine choice. The man can approach, invest, and engage from a place of desire rather than obligation. When he feels he is connecting with someone who is already grounded and complete, the relationship becomes a collaboration, not a lifeline, which deepens attachment naturally. Finally, men are drawn to stability because it mirrors the calm they wish to find in themselves. The presence of someone emotionally balanced creates a reflective environment, inviting him to slow down, process his own thoughts, and recognize his own emotional capacity. Attachment often begins not when a woman chases, but when her presence allows him to confront and understand his own feelings in a safe, measured way. Emotional stability acts as both anchor and mirror, fostering a connection that is intentional, enduring, and deeply felt. Autonomy in a woman creates a magnetic pull that goes far beyond physical attraction because it communicates self-respect, confidence, and the ability to lead a fulfilling life independently. When a woman lives on her own terms, makes her own decisions, and does not center her life entirely around a man, it signals that her attention and time are not automatically available. This independence is deeply attractive because it introduces a sense of choice and challenge. A man recognizes that connecting with her requires intention, effort, and respect. The value of her presence is no longer assumed. It is earned through genuine interaction and mutual engagement, which naturally encourages emotional attachment. Autonomy doesn't push a man away, it draws him in, precisely because it positions the relationship as something mutually chosen rather than unilaterally given. Men are often unconsciously wired to seek partners who balance warmth with independence. When a woman demonstrates that she has her own life goals and passions, it reassures the man that she is whole without him, which paradoxically makes him want to be part of her life even more. Dependence can be a subtle form of pressure, signaling that his presence is necessary for her happiness. Autonomy, however, removes that pressure and allows him to approach freely from desire rather than obligation. He is not needed to fix or complete her, but he is invited to contribute to a connection that already has structure and meaning. That invitation carries a sense of respect, which strengthens attachment. Autonomy also preserves mystery, which plays a significant role in emotional engagement. When someone is fully available, there is little left to discover. Predictability diminishes excitement, but a woman who prioritizes her own space, choices, and boundaries creates a sense of depth. The man begins to notice nuances, to learn about her on his own, and to appreciate the parts of her life he cannot immediately access. That slow discovery process stimulates curiosity and investment. Men tend to attach more deeply when they feel they are gradually earning insight into someone's world, rather than receiving everything instantly. Autonomy naturally cultivates this process, creating fertile ground for meaningful emotional bonds. Furthermore, autonomy signals emotional intelligence. A woman who manages her own life demonstrates self-awareness, resilience, and the capacity to handle challenges without over-reliance on others. Men instinctively sense that her stability and independence mean that any emotional connection formed will be healthy, balanced, and sustainable. He can trust that his feelings will be met with reciprocity rather than volatility. Attachment deepens in environments where both partners are grounded and self-reliant, because connection emerges from choice, understanding, and mutual respect, not need or desperation. Ultimately, a woman's autonomy gives the man room to show up willingly and meaningfully. He invests because he wants to, not because he feels obligated. Her independence frames the relationship as a conscious partnership where both parties are active participants rather than passive responders. This conscious engagement is the foundation of emotional attachment. It grows naturally when a man respects, admires, and chooses to participate in a woman's life, knowing she remains complete and self-directed regardless of his presence. Mystery is a subtle but powerful force in emotional attachment because it engages the mind in ways that predictability never can. When a woman is always available or constantly pursuing, every detail of her attention and behavior becomes familiar, leaving little room for intrigue. Humans are naturally drawn to the unknown. Our brains are wired to pay attention to what is uncertain or requires discovery. Mystery creates a mental space where curiosity thrives, prompting reflection, anticipation, and emotional investment. For men, this effect is particularly strong because it invites them to explore, interpret, and engage actively rather than passively receiving. When a woman preserves a sense of mystery, she is not playing games or withholding affection for manipulation. She is simply maintaining her own depth, boundaries, and life outside of his immediate sphere. That presence of the unknown transforms ordinary interactions into moments that are noticed, remembered, and valued. When a woman's world does not revolve entirely around a man, he is compelled to pay attention to the layers of her personality, her interests, and her life experiences. The curiosity that develops is a natural response to the fact that he cannot predict every reaction, emotion, or decision. Men often attach to women who maintain this sense of self-contained complexity because discovering her becomes a process rather than a transaction. Each interaction feels earned and significant rather than routine or automatic. Mystery encourages men to invest mentally and emotionally. They think about her between encounters, consider her perspective, and anticipate future interactions. Emotional energy grows in OT because it is demanded, but because it is drawn out organically through engagement and curiosity. Mystery also fosters respect. When a man senses that he does not have immediate access to every aspect of a woman's life, he recognizes that her attention and emotional energy are valuable. This perception elevates her presence from ordinary to meaningful. It signals that connection with her is not guaranteed, which naturally heightens the stakes and encourages mindfulness in how he interacts. When attachment develops in this context, it is rooted in admiration and appreciation rather than complacency or habit. The effort he invests in understanding her world becomes inseparable from his emotional bond, making the attachment deeper and more resilient. Additionally, mystery nurtures self-reflection. When a man cannot fully predict or control a woman's reactions, he must confront his own desires, insecurities, and feelings. He cannot rely on constant reassurance. Instead, he processes his own emotions and evaluates why he cares, how he responds, and what he values about the connection. This internal reflection strengthens emotional attachment because it transforms his feelings from superficial infatuation into deliberate investment. In essence, mystery allows attachment to grow naturally by creating mental engagement, fostering respect, and encouraging self-directed emotional investment. A woman who preserves her depth and does not reveal every detail of herself immediately provides fertile ground for curiosity, admiration, and lasting connection, making men attach more strongly than they would to someone entirely predictable. Emotional attachment often forms most deeply when a man feels that a woman mirrors him back to himself, rather than when she pursues validation or approval. This reflection is subtle and powerful because it engages a man's sense of identity, self-worth, and understanding of his own emotions. When a woman constantly chases, her focus is outward, on securing attention, reassurance, or affirmation, which can shift the dynamic from mutual connection to performance. The man may respond, but the emotional tie is shallow because it is built on obligation or reaction, rather than authentic resonance. In contrast, when a woman maintains her own life, her boundaries, and her autonomy, she creates space for a man to observe himself through the connection. Her presence allows him to see his strengths, vulnerabilities, and values reflected back, often without conscious effort on either side. This reflective quality fosters emotional depth and long-term attachment. Men are naturally drawn to environments where they feel seen and understood, even indirectly. A woman who is emotionally grounded, confident, and self-contained provides this kind of environment. When he observes how she responds to life, handles challenges, and engages with others, he gains insight into his own character and behavior. He begins to notice how he reacts, what he prioritizes, and the ways he desires to contribute emotionally. Attachment grows because the relationship becomes not only about her, but about his own journey of self-awareness and self-expression. The bond is strengthened by the fact that his feelings and choices matter intrinsically, rather than simply meeting her demands or chasing her attention. This dynamic also encourages emotional accountability. Because the woman does not chase, the man must actively choose to engage, invest, and communicate. That choice requires him to confront his own emotions and intentions. He cannot rely on pursuit to dictate the pace of connection. He must examine what he truly feels and why. By doing so, his emotional involvement becomes self-directed, and the attachment that forms is rooted in an understanding and personal investment, rather than convenience or compulsion. The woman, by maintaining her own sense of self and not pressing for constant reassurance, acts as a mirror that reflects his inner state back to him, allowing him to align his emotions with his authentic desires. Moreover, this reflective process enhances intimacy in a way that chasing cannot. Attachment deepens when a man feels that he is valued not for how much he pursues, but for who he is when he is fully present. A woman who does not chase encourages him to show his best self voluntarily, creating a natural flow of mutual recognition and respect. Her stability, autonomy, and selective engagement allow him to participate in the relationship from a place of authenticity. This emotional resonance, being mirrored and validated indirectly, builds attachment that is strong, berate, and enduring because it emerges from understanding and choice rather than pressure or obligation. In the end, men become emotionally attached to women who don't chase them, because connection built on choice, respect, and authenticity is far stronger than connection built on pursuit. When a woman maintains her independence, preserves mystery, and embodies emotional stability, she creates space for a man to engage willingly, reflect inwardly, and invest meaningfully. Her presence is intentional, her attention valuable, and her life complete without needing validation, qualities that naturally inspire admiration, curiosity, and lasting attachment. Attachment grows not from chasing, demanding, or overextending, but from allowing a man to arrive on his own terms, to choose to care, and to connect with someone whose depth he has earned. It is in this balance of autonomy and engagement, scarcity and availability, reflection and authenticity, that the strongest, most enduring bonds are formed, bonds rooted in choice, respect, and the quiet power of genuine connection.